G'day, you 10. How you going? Today, we're sort of pulling together all of what we've been doing for the last week or so. So we started doing some factorizing last week, where we're factorizing quadratic expressions. Okay, we're using what we call the PSF method to work out how to do those factorizations. We then did a little bit of simple quadratic equations where we realized that in a quadratic equation, it's possible to have more than one answer. So you can have two answers in a quadratic equation. We looked at simple ones where the answer was plus something or minus something. What we're looking at today are quadratic equations which we can only solve by factorizing. Okay, so this is where that factorizing skill comes in handy. And we're going to be using this thing. It sounds complicated, okay, but when you break it down, not so much. The null factor law, okay? Null just means zero, okay? Factor just means when you're multiplying things together. So basically, if you're multiplying two things together and the product of that equals zero, then either one of those things could equal zero. Okay, so if I had 4 times 0, that would equal 0. If I had 10 times 0, it equals 0. Okay, so if anything that's being multiplied together equals 0, then one of those factors has to be 0 as well. The only problem is it could be either of them if we don't know the value of them. Okay, so if I had a times b, okay, I don't know the value of a times b, but I know that they equal 0 when they're multiplied together, then either a is 0 or b is 0. Okay, in the same way as we did last week, we now have two possible answers, two possible solutions to this equation. Okay, so when we factorize a quadratic expression, what we're going to end up with is two things multiplied together. And we're going to use this null factor law to come up with the solutions by saying either the first thing we're multiplying is 0 or the second thing we're multiplying is 0. Let me show you how to set out your working for this. So for this first example here, for A, what I first have to do is factorize. Okay, now this one is simple. I just take out a factor of 3x. I don't have to use PSF because I have a common factor. So I take out 3x, and that's going to be x. Okay, and then the other thing here is going to be plus 2. Okay, and then that equals 0. So all we've done is we've factorized the left-hand side here, and we said that it equals 0 because that's what the question said initially. And we have this interesting thing here. So either 3x equals 0, okay, remember we're timesing 3x by x plus 2, or x plus 2 equals 0. Either of those can be a valid solution. So therefore 3x equals 0, and then we're going to write or x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, either one of those is a valid solution to the equation, okay, because they're two things multiplying together to equal 0. Okay, so if 3x equals 0, then that means x equals 0. Or if x plus 2 equals 0, if I minus 2 from both sides, I get x equals minus 2. Okay, now another way that we can write this, if we've got two solutions, is we can say therefore x equals, okay, minus 2 and then comma 0. So basically it's saying it's either minus 2 or it's 0. That's what the comma means in that instance. Okay, so that seems like a lot of work, but when you start to get familiar with this, it's not so bad. Let's do B again. If you want to have a go at B, see if you can do it yourself, pause the video and then restart it to check your answer. So here we've got to take out a common factor of 4x, and then we've got x minus 2 equaling 0. Okay, so either 4x is 0, so therefore 4x is 0, or x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, now if 4x is equal to 0, then that means x equals 0. Okay, and if x minus 2 equals 0, if we add 2 to both sides this time, we get x equals positive 2. Okay, so therefore x equals 0 or 2, using the comma notation there. Okay, so we're factorizing, and then we're using the fact that either of those factors is going to equal 0 to get our two solutions to our equation. Okay, now this is a bit different to other methods of solving equations that you've done. You're not rearranging to get things on the same side or anything like that. You're actually just trying to factorize and use the null factor law. So the logic's a bit different to other methods of solving equations. All right, now for these two examples, we're going to do the same thing, but we have to use our PSF method to factorize. Okay, so the product is going to be 12 and the sum is going to be -8. Okay, so you got to remember the product is your constant term and the sum is your coefficient of x. And so the factors, okay, it's multiplying to equal 12, adding to equal -8. So that means we've got two negative factors because we've got a positive product and a negative sum. So we're going to think it's going to be -2 and -6. Okay, the reason why it has to be those is because it's either 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. 2 and 6 are the other ones that we can get -8 with. So -2 and -6. Okay, so that means we can factorize this by going x minus 2 and then x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, now if we were to expand that out again, we would get the question, so we know we've done it correctly. But now we can use our null factor law. So therefore, either we've got two things multiplying together, either x minus 2 equals 0 or x minus 6 equals 0. Now, if x minus 2 is 0, if we add 2 to both sides, then x equals +2. Now, if x minus 6 equals 0, then if we add 6 to both sides, then x equals +6. Okay, so therefore, x equals 2 or 6. Now, you might notice some interesting pattern here. We had x minus 2 and x minus 6 as our factors, and then the solution was +2 and +6. So yes, you can sort of work out quickly. Once you've got x minus 2 here, the x is going to be the opposite sign as to whatever the other term in the bracket is. So if it's x minus 6, then the solution would be x equals +6, the opposite sign. But if we have an x plus 2 as a factor, then the solution is x minus 2, because you've got to think about what's going to make that bracket equal 0. It's going to be the opposite sign of whatever else is in there. Okay, if +2 is in there, then -2 is going to make it 0. If -2 is in there, then +2 is going to make it 0. So that's why we end up with this pattern of the opposite sign of the other term of the bracket being the solution. So we can use that in a quick form if we would like. So I'm going to use PSF. So the product is -15. The sum is +2. The factors, okay? We're going to have one negative factor, one positive factor. The positive factor is going to be the bigger one. So it's going to be 5 and -3. So if we've got to think about things that multiply to equal 15, okay, it's 1 off 15, or 5 and 3. And so it's going to be -3 in this case. So then I can factorize. So x plus 5, x minus 3 equals 0. And now I can here avoid doing all those other steps that show the null factor law just by using this little shortcut. So I know that if I've got x plus 5, then x would have to equal -5 to equal for that to equal 0. And if I've got x minus 3, then x would have to be +3 to equal 0. And then I have my solution. So you can use that sort of opposite sign trick to sort of get to the solution a bit quicker. But I wanted to show you the full logic using the null factor law there as well. So you can use either method in that instance when you're doing these questions. All right, good luck with the work today. See you later.